So at present, we have 760 participants.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome you all. We have 760 participants. Can you all hear me? Just raise your hand. Okay, good. So okay, so welcome you all on the lecture by the Denise on the forensic entomology in medico-legal evidence and medico-legal investigation. So before starting the session, I'll welcome Denise, and I'll salute to all the Corona warriors, those who are working for us, and we are in a safe at our home. So, okay. So, and I wish you happy Mother's Day to all the participants. So, Denise. So, Denise is she is PhD in entomology from the Rutgers University, and had done a research focus on the forensic entomology only. She is a member of the American Board of Forensic Entomology. She is also a member of international representative of the North European Association of Forensic Entomology. She is an associate member of European Association for Forensic Entomology. She is currently an assistant professor in forensic science at Keene University, USA, where she is developing courses, advising students and conducting several research related to the forensic entomology. In this session, we have participants from around 2,600 plus, 1,000 hours in Zoom room, and many are from the Facebook Live and the webinar system. So, and 55 plus countries are participating. 600 organizations are taking part in this today's session. These are the countries where we have the participants. We have the participants from the several countries. So these are the name of the country. And if I miss, definitely there are many more countries, those who have participated. So I welcome Denise again, and I give a session to you. You can start your session.
Of course, I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, audible.
Perfect. All right. So good morning, everyone. I mean, I know that it's evening for you. It's morning for me. I am currently in the United States. I want to thank you very much for having me here today. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about forensic entomology, to talk about my experience, my research, what I do. And I definitely want to thank you for giving me this space on a Sunday. So I really, truly appreciate everything. I also want to say that you are more than free to ask questions. The thing is that probably I'm not going to look at the chat room until I'm done, but please do feel free to ask any question. I will make sure I read everything at the end of the session. Don't hold back. Just a little disclaimer before we get started. There will be some pictures that maybe someone can find disturbing. There will be some pictures of decomposing bodies, decomposing carcasses. So I just wanted to make it clear before we started. I know that those are not easy topics for everyone, so just so you guys know. About today's presentations, I'm going to be talking about the use of insects and arthropods in forensic investigation. So I'm going to talk about forensic entomology in medico-legal forensic entomology to be more specific. And then towards the end, I will talk about the training that is available out there for people who are interested in forensic entomology. I'm going to talk to you guys about the potential of forensic entomology in forensic science in general. And then at the end, of course, I'm going to leave it open in case we want to have just a little discussion, a little debate about whatever I just said. So I'm just going to get started. First of all, just to introduce myself again, my name is Denise Gemmellaro. I was born and raised in Italy, but I'm currently in the United States. My focus is forensic entomology. I teach at Kane as a professor of forensic science, but the research of the focus of my research and my main area is absolutely forensic entomology. And so this is why I am talking to you guys here today. So I'm just going to get started, and we're going to define what forensic entomology is. If we have to give it a very specific definition, what could we say about forensic entomology? Forensic entomology is the application of entomology, and entomology is just the study of insects, to any type of legal issues. If you have an issue that involves insects and a lawyer and someone can potentially get sued, that's an area for forensic entomology. If we want to break it down into three main areas, we can identify the following. We can identify stored product entomology. That is the investigation of the unwanted presence of insects in food products after the food has been harvested. So if you find a bug on your apple, you're in an orchard, you're walking around, just grab an apple and you find a maggot in your apple, there's really no one that you can sue there. So that is really not a question of forensic entomology. But if you open a bag of chips and you find some tiny beetles crawling around those chips, then someone can definitely be responsible for that. So in that case, that could be a perfect application of forensic entomology. The second major area of forensic entomology is urban entomology. Urban entomology is the investigation of insect presence, insects activity in any type of man-made structure. So it can be something as small as having ants in your kitchen, or it can be something a little bit more dramatic as having ants crawling on a patient on a hospital bed. And this is actually something real that has happened in the past months or years in Italy. There's been a serious problems. In that case, can someone be found responsible? Oh, absolutely, yes. So that is another major branch of forensic entomology. And then what this presentation is going to be about, medico-legal entomology. That is the investigation of the focuses on insects that are somehow attracted to decomposing organic remains, which can be food leftovers or can be a dead body. And those insects are important for an investigation because they can really give a lot of information to the investigators, to the criminal justice system. And those little informants should be treated as any other type of evidence that you recover on a crime scene. So why do we use those insects? We say that those are little informants, that, okay, what type of information can they give the investigators and whoever else is involved in the events? Well, the three major questions that they can help answer are about where your potential crime happened, because we cannot really talk about a crime unless someone is being convicted. So potentially speaking, if this is a crime, where did it happen? Did it happen in the same place that I'm finding the body, or is this a secondary crime scene? They can answer a question relative to when the crime, if there is any, happened. And they can answer questions even relative to how did this happen? What was the dynamic that brought to the, death of this individual? So let's start with the where. So one of the major insects that are involved in medical legal investigations are blowflies. They're not the only one, but they're definitely the major ones. But also, despite that, insects are they are creatures that are present pretty much in every ecosystem over planet, and their distribution, even though is pretty, it's pretty spread out across our planet, it's also very tied to the type of habitats. Specific species will live in specific habitats depending on the natural conditions, depending on the urbanization. There's a lot of factors that play a role here. So there's been cases there, and this is actually a very famous case that was solved thanks to the fact that some insects are known to be living in urban community and not in rural community. In Hawaii, there was a case where a dead body had been found in the woods. But the species that were colonizing the dead bodies, the maggots that were feeding on the body, those maggots are belong to a species that is not commonly found in those rural areas. It's more specific of urban areas. So that was a indication that the body probably was moved. I'm talking about post-mortem movement. And that piece of information was only possible thanks to the analysis of the communities that were feeding on the body. Because the reason that we can apply insects to medical legal investigation is just because some insects will use a dead body as food and shelter. They are necrophagous, so they will feed on the dead body. And others are necrophilous. They will be found around the dead body because they like the body itself, yes, but also because they like, whatever other things are attracted to the dead body. So because of this, that's why we can make all of these connections, we can get all of that information. We have, you can really also use insects as indicators of, nowadays is a very popular topic, climate change, because some insects are more popular, are more common in warmer areas, such as the southern United States. But lately, they have been recorded in northern states. That is definitely an important ecological, I apologize, an important ecological phenomenon, but that is also something that we can absolutely use and apply in forensic investigations. So moving on, we said that they can help us with establishing when. When's a potential crime happened? That is the $1 million question. Everybody wants to know that. Everybody wants to know when did it happen, because it offers perspective on the crime itself. It can also confirm someone's alibis. It's very, very important to zoom in into the moment, the date that this happened. And the interval that is normally referred to when doing this type of calculations is the PMI, the postmortem interval. Now, for the sake of this presentation, we can probably keep referring to that as PMI. I'm just going to say, without any type of I don't want to be too technical, that when you look at entomological evidence, some people prefer to distinguish the interval that you can estimate, and is a little bit different than the postmortem interval, because what the postmortem interval is defined as time since death, the time from when death occurred to when the body was discovered. Insects can definitely help refine that estimation, but we should not forget that insects are not the main dead body. The main piece of evidence will still remain the body. So the estimation of PMI is still something that should be done, can be done accurately, with the help of a pathologist. But definitely the insects can help refine that interval. And how do we do that? How can we use insects to actually help as the estimation of time of death? We work backwards. We know the development of specific necrophagous insects like blowflies. We know that they have an egg stage, then they have larvae. Normally they have 3 instars of larvae. Then they go away and they pupate and they become adults. So you're gonna, depending on what you find on your dead body, you're gonna work your way backwards, and you're gonna go as close as you can. You're gonna hopefully hit the moment in your calculations where the maggots that you find, the pupae that you find, were eggs. And that will put you somehow close or very close to time of death. And again, the major indicators in criminal investigations when we talk about forensic entomology are blowflies. Blowflies is just a common name for a family of Diptera. Those are your true flies, the insects that only have 2 working wings. The family is called Caliphoridae. And their stages, they look something like this. So the adult blowflies will find the dead body and will lay eggs. And will lay eggs, not like individual eggs. They will lay eggs in clusters. And an individual blowflies can lay up to 100 of eggs. So this is why you have massive colonization of dead bodies, even because chances are you're not going to have just one blowflies. You have a lot of them. They're going to start laying eggs in natural orifices. That will mean the face, the mouth, the eyes, the nose, the genital area. And that is because, natural orifices, they offer protection, they offer moisture. And so that's like the perfect place for a mother blowfly. Since today is Mother Day, let's make a little tribute to female blowflies. They're just looking for the perfect spot for their offspring to develop without being predated, and more importantly, without drying out. So if a natural orifices will also provide the moisture that they need. Once the eggs are ready, they're gonna hatch, and they're gonna hatch into what we call first instar larvae. We have 3 instars in the family of blowflies. So they will hatch once, they will hatch into first instars, they will molt twice into second instar and third instars. And these larvae, they are very voracious. They're gonna feed. Their purpose is to feed. So they will consume the body fairly quickly, of course, depending on the number, on the temperature, many factors, but that's what they're there to do, to consume the body. Once they're done eating, the larvae will move away from the body and will find a dry, secluded place to pupate. When they pupate, of course, they're still alive. They're just, they don't require any food at this point. They're just changing. These are holometabolous creatures. They have complete metamorphosis. They undergo complete metamorphosis. So inside the pupa, all they're doing is they are changing their morphology. They're going from something that looks like a wormy creature, like a maggot, to a winged fly. So that's why they require that pupal time. Once they're done with their metamorphosis, they are going to eclose from the pupae. The adult blowfly will come out of the pupae, and the cycle will repeat again. So if we know this cycle, if we know their, if we investigate the developmental cycle of blowfly species at different temperatures, we will have an instrument, we will have a tool that allows us to use reference information when we have to investigate an actual crime or an actual death. And so this is just to illustrate how we can go back to time of death, or we can at least try and refine the PMI interval using insect development. There's another way to use insect, which is basically this method. You find an insect on a dead body and you ask yourself and the insects, how old are you? Because if you can estimate the age of a maggot, you can go back in time, back to when that maggot was an egg, and that can be absolutely very close to the moment of death. Another method will, instead of asking the insects how old they are, you will ask the insect, what kind of insect are you? What is your species? What is your group? What is your order? Because we know that different insects come to a dead body in different orders in a predictable sequence. That is the whole concept of ecological succession. And so if we can analyze the type of community that you have on a dead body, then you can also estimate time of death. So all of this is to tell you guys that insects can be very helpful informant when it comes to establishing when did it happen. I'm going to just show you some morphological features of maggots. And the reason that I'm doing this, again, I'm not trying to make it more complicated or more technical than it needs to be. This is just to hopefully have you guys appreciate the morphology of blowfly maggots. And these are, again, the most common maggots that you will find in the dead body. And tell you that these details that you guys are seeing here in the pictures can only be seen using a microscope. So whenever we see on those TV shows, which by the way, I absolutely like, those true crime TV shows like CSI and CIS, Bones, when they grab a little maggot, they put it against the light and they say, well, this is absolutely a second instar of Lucilia mexicana. Therefore, the body has been there since yesterday at 4. That is absolutely not possible. It doesn't matter how good your eyes can be, certain features can only be assessed using a microscope, and certain estimations can only be done after conducting some analysis that sometimes can take weeks or months. So it's absolutely good that they offer visibility to the discipline, but it's also, you know, important to put in perspective what can be done, what cannot really be done. We're not that good yet. But again, we're not that good, but we can still be good and we can absolutely still be helpful. So we also said that insects can help us somehow understand how did something happen. And again, it can be a crime, it can just be death. How did it happen? And the way that they can help us assessing that is because we know certain behaviors specific to certain insects. And here I'm going to show you a picture of a dead body that was found in southern United States. So you guys see that the body appears to be dark. Some people can even say that appears to be burned, but it's wearing clothes that you can see is wearing pants. So those things are still visible. So the body was not burned in a fire. This is just the effect of exposure to the sun, to high temperature, not a lot of humidity. So this is just how the body would appear. So we said before that we know that blowflies will start colonization, and colonization just means laying eggs on a dead body in natural orifices, such as all the orifices that are present on our face. In this case, I mean, I don't know if it's if you guys can see it clearly from the screen. In this case, that was really not very much the case. What we saw in this case is that there was massive colonization in the forearm, which is a place where, we don't have, it's not a place to be colonized first. It's not a primary site of colonization. And, if we zoom in, you guys can hopefully see that the forearm is almost completely skeletonized. Completely skeletonized just because, again, I don't know if you guys can see here in the soil, skeletonized due to insect activity. So what would make an adult fly prefer a forearm over a face, over a mouth, when it's the moment for her to lay eggs? Considering that she's looking for a place that will offer protection and moisture to the offspring. So that answer is very simple. That was probably a wound on the forearm. And so that wound would have become another perfect, not natural, but still an orifice that would be moist, because a wound would have the presence of blood. So that will absolutely ensure moisture, and it will offer protection because it's a wound. So it's still like a little pocket that the blowfly can use to lay eggs. So in this case, if we, because what we do as entomologists is we look at this information, we analyze it, we make exactly these considerations that I'm making with you guys, then we give this information to the investigators. And together with them, we try to understand what could have happened. So this is a very peculiar place for a wound. Because chances are, if you're falling, if you're falling down, you're gonna have the tendency, to put your hands in front of you, or you're not gonna have any instinct at all. So you're just gonna fall. And this is not a place where you would normally get a wound just by bumping onto something. This is a kind of a specific area for defensive wound. If someone is attacking you, you have the tendency to protect yourself. And the first thing that will be exposed will be your forearms. So this was a defensive wound. And you can also see that there was like this semi-weapon near the hand. So this person was attacked. And we could come to the conclusion that this person was attacked just by looking at the unusual place chosen by blowflies to lay their eggs. So this is an important contribution that entomology could give the investigation as, regarding to the how did this happen? Well, it happened because someone was assaulted, because someone was defending himself. So this is absolutely, in my opinion, this is absolutely amazing that we can know that just by looking at the behavior of some insects. So these are just three of the ways, that we can use insects. Definitely the estimation, help in the estimation of the postmortem interval is absolutely one of them. But, they can also be used in other ways, in other very important different ways. First of all, toxicology. Insects are just another substrate, exactly as would any other body tissue would be. Insects are feeding on the body, and they're feeding on the body means that in their crops, they're going to be full of the tissue of the body. Tissue means, yes, the flesh, but also any other potential substance that was in the body. So you can use insects as a substrate for toxicology analysis. Definitely movement of remains, post-mortem movement of the body. We can even, since we are saying that they are consuming the dead body, so they may very well contain any type of substance that was ingested by the person prior to death. They can also contain DNA. And that is true, DNA, yes, of the victim, because they're eating it, but also any other type of foreign DNA, non-insect DNA. And it can be DNA that has been left off by a perpetrator. For example, in cases of victims that were raped and killed, if they were raped and perhaps the remains are naked at that point, and we just said that blowflies will start with colonizing natural orifices like the genital area, and if the perpetrator had left any DNA behind in the genital area, that DNA will be ingested by the maggots. And being ingested by the maggots means that they can be recovered from the maggots. And another very important application of forensic entomology, medico-legal forensic entomology, is its help in cases of abuse and neglect. Yes, blowflies do prefer dead remains. That's their top one choice. But there are some cases where blowflies can be found colonizing hosts that are still alive. And that is because, one of the reasons of them, of course, could be because the living host has some necrotic tissue. And that necrotic tissue will be attractive to the flies as if it was a dead body. For example, I was contacted months ago by a hospital in Chicago where this woman, elderly woman, alive in the hospital, her son went to visit her and he noticed something that was moving inside her mouth. So of course, I mean, they called the doctor, they called the nurse, they wanted to see what it was, and it was blowfly larvae, big blowfly larvae. So they sent it over to me to estimate how long have these maggots been in this woman's mouth, considering that she's alive and she is allegedly being taken care of in a healthcare facility. And the nurse would swear, well, I brush her teeth twice a day, it's impossible. So the question becomes, is it possible that since this woman is cleaning the mouth of the patient twice a day, is it possible that these maggots could have been this big in the time in between the two, when the nurse went and actually cleaned the woman? And unfortunately, the answer is no. Those maggots were so big that at least they had been in this woman's mouth for 5 days. And it is a very, I imagine, is a very, very painful situation, even because remember, the purpose of the maggots is to eat and dig deep in the tissue. So it is absolutely at least uncomfortable. At least we can all agree that it's uncomfortable. So this is an application of forensic entomology in cases of abuse and neglect. And so this just expands the potential of forensic entomology investigations. What we do with forensic entomology is we study entomology and insect colonization very in a tight relationship with the decomposition stages. We know the decomposition of a body, whether it's a human or an animal body, decomposition of organic remains of a carcass will go through a series of stages. And those stages have their own phenomena, their own thanatological phenomena, and they also will have their own insect activity. So if we study the decomposition stage and the relative insect activity, we can have a better understanding of how the process works, and therefore we can have more information when it comes down to a real case that we actually have to analyze and assess. So the stages, and I mean, if you guys are familiar with it, some people use a slightly different nomenclatures for the stages. It just doesn't matter. That this is what it seems. What I found, it seems there's to be an agreement around the names of these stages. So this is why I chose those. But it is absolutely possible that you will find a different name for the active decay stage. So I just wanted to, to make that clear. But, we can follow decomposition going through these 5 stages, and those are the fresh, the bloat stage, the active decay, the advanced decay, and the dry decay. And when we do a lot of our studies, in the United States, also in part of Europe for sure, we use, like, if you look at a lot of research conducted in the field of forensic entomology, pigs are normally, when of course humans are not, when humans are not an option, pigs are the probably #1 choice. And that is because there's a lot of similarities between pigs and humans. The size is relatively manageable. And also you can definitely work with something with piglets that are very small and very easy to handle. And you can work with something that is a little bit bigger. It's also easy to obtain them. Personally, I work with a pig farm, so they have a lot of carcasses that they have to dispose of regardless of me, so that no pigs are killed for the purpose of my research, but they still have to be disposed of. So instead of being disposed, in a meaningless way, at least we can dispose of them and at the same time gather some data that we can use in different fields. So that's how I have so far obtained the pigs for my research. This is one of the first decomposition studies conducted by a very well-known forensic entomologist, Dr. Haskell. This is back in '86, and it was just a overview of the decomposition of a pig. So you can see that this is a very fresh pig. You can still see the blood. You can see that as we progress, we see the bloated stage. And that is the stage, when the body is fresh, it's just fresh. You don't have any particular smell. You don't have any particular visual phenomena that you can immediately see. What we see, the fresh stage sometimes is rigor mortis, so the body becomes stiff. Definitely you can see the algor mortis, so the body is starting to cool down until the temperature of the body reaches the temperature of the environment. And then you have the liver mortis. Liver mortis is the discoloration of the body. Since the blood is no longer flowing, it's going to pool. And of course, that pooling of the blood is going to cause some discoloration of the body. Some area will look darker than others, and that will depend, of course, on the position of the body. But these are basically the phenomena, the thanatological phenomena that you will see on the fresh stage. After that is passed, we started seeing that the body starts to bloat, and the bloating stage is due to the fact that you have a lot of, even though in this case the pig can be dead, but the bacteria inside the intestine, inside the body, they're still alive and doing well. They're just working without oxygen. So they will create these gases from the inside that are going to make the body bloat. This pressure eventually will break the skin and the tissue. And here you can see a few lacerations on the abdomen of the pig, and definitely in the thorax area. And this will cause bodily fluids to escape the body, even gases to escape the body. So that's when the body will start to smell. But eventually all of this will also lead to the body, deflate, because all the gases at this point are gone. Of course, this is very, very tight with insect activity. Hopefully you guys can see that there are numerous flies on the bloated belly of the pig. And if you look at the face, you see that there's like this white substance, and all that white substance is just blowfly eggs and some maggots that have hatched. So at this point, like, you have decomposition working, And at the same time, you have insect activity working. So all of that is being, is acting on this case, the pig, to consume it. If we move on, you see that all those maggots that were hatching just before, at this point, all those maggots are working on the pig to consume it. There's a lot of them. In this case, it's a beautiful maggot mass. And this maggot mass, I can guarantee you, is developing a lot of heat. The maggots are moving and are eating. So there's their movement and their metabolism that is working there. And that is producing a lot of an increase in temperature, a very, very significant increase in temperature. I can assure you that if you were there with this maggot mass and you will just, got close with your hand on the carcass, you will feel it. Definitely, you will absolutely see it if you were using any type of thermometer, but you could even empirically feel the heat that they are producing. And then we said, once they're done eating, they're going to disperse. They're going to move away because they need a place to pupate. And so all you have left is just the dry remains, in this case of the pig. So no more soft tissues that can be appealing to adult flies, or they can be consumed by maggots. You will have other type of arthropods like beetles, certain type of beetles. But in terms of, your Californidae, your blowflies, this is no longer appealing to them. We can see the same thing happening in humans. And this is, again, one of the first research done in the body farm, the first body farm in Tennessee. This is a fresh dead body. You can see that after 3 days, you see that the skin has already been broken. You see the colonization is already pretty intense in the head and in some areas of the upper torso and the genitals. Moving on, you see that you have a maggot mass, but at this point it's kind of on the side and going under the body. And that is because this is Tennessee, so the temperature is probably very high. And you can see it even from the fact that the skin at this point is very dry, it's almost like leathery. If maggots had stayed on the surface, they would have died. They would have dried out. It would have been too hot for them. So that's why you see that the colonization is kind of moving all around the shoulder and under, so that they can continue eating, but they're still a little bit protected. And at the end, you can see that the thorax, the head, the neck is almost completely skeletonized at this point. The other areas are not. Again, we just noticed that it was probably due to the pattern the colonization was following. But that is definitely, like, you can definitely appreciate the contribution of insects to the decomposition process. And after 24 days, at this point, you have bones. You don't have any soft tissue. You have just some very dry tissue. You cannot even see any active insects on the body. Probably if you move the remains and look at the soil under the body, you can definitely see something. But in general, insect activity at this point is pretty much done, at least in terms of blowflies. So if we want to be specific, during the fresh stage, when we said that the body is not decomposed, what kind of insect activity can we expect? Well, that's when you have a fresh dead body, that is a great place for adult flies to start arriving and to start scouting for places to lay eggs. Blowflies can be accompanied by flesh flies, other fruit flies, and they will start laying eggs, as we said, in the natural orifices for protection and moisture. This is a fresh dead body, and you can see that it has some type of weird materials in the eyes and the forehead. And if we zoom in, we can see that the weird material is just blowfly eggs laid in the natural orifices, and many of them have already hatched. And at this point, there are tiny maggots that are wandering around and starting to eat. And again, so this is what we can see on a fresh stage. This is again a fresh body, but at this point, the head has been exposed to insect activity more, and therefore you can see that it's almost skeletonized due to the fact that the maggots are eating it. If we move on to the bloat stage, we said that that's when the body starts swelling. So at this point, the body is still attractive for adult blowflies and other types of diptera, of flies. But also at this point, you're gonna have maggots that are already starting to eat the body. This is an example of a bloated dead body. And you can see here it's circled just to show that this thing that looks like a grain of rice is just a bigger maggot that has already had the chance to feed more on the dead body. Moving on to the active decay stage. This is when, again, the skin starts to break, gases and fluids are escaping, and so you're going to start smelling the body. It's going to be less attractive to adult blowflies, but you're going to have more other groups arriving, like beetles and other insects that are there, not just for the body, but because they're interested in the maggots. They're predators of those maggots. So this is an example of a body that was found in the trunk of a car. So you have the greenhouse effect that is going to increase the temperature even more. And they're going to, and you know, everything is going to speed up the process of decomposition, the temperature and the fact that the maggots are operating at a higher temperature. The advanced decay stage, most of the tissues is gone because it's been eaten by the maggots, it's been decomposed. And at this point is where the maggots are going to find a quiet place to pupate. So again, this is a body found in southern United States. It's dressed, but when we remove the clothes, we can see that the body it's not skeletonized. You can still see some tissue, but the tissue is absolutely dry and leathery. And at this point, what we see is that we see some beetles, specifically these dermestes beetles. These are also called carpet beetles. They're called carpet beetles because they are, they can be found in carpets, but just because, and also because they have these hairy appearance. And these beetles, they feed on dehydrated remains, but even just hair or nails. They really don't need a lot of moisture. And then we can also see, like this picture here, newly emerged flies. When the flies eclose from the puparia, they still have to acquire their pigmentation. That's why they're whitish. Their wings have to be inflated yet, so they're not working. So they need a little bit of time. And this is something that you can start seeing at that stage, because that would be the end of the life cycle of the blowflies that came to the beginning of the decomposition. And moving on to the dry stage, this is at this point, you really have no moisture whatsoever. Everything is dry. You have some bones, you have cartilage. If you have skin, is very, very dry. And at this point, it's really not much a question of you find things and you ask how old these things are. Is you find things and you ask, what are these things? Because remember, you can also use the successional method to understand which insects are here right now, because that can be an indicator of the decomposition stage and, you know, time of death. And this is a case where this body was found in this abandoned house. And again, if we clean it up, that's what it looks like. And at this point, again, the calculation, there was nothing really alive that was feeding on the body. It was too old. So what we could do is we look at the type of insects and arthropods that are there. We look at their behavior, their seasonality, and we can come up with an estimate. And in this case, the estimate was 6 years. And again, that's not because the maggots that was found was 6 years old, but because we found remains belonging to different groups. I'm just going to have one case for you. I know that we're getting close. This is just a very interesting case. This was a body that was found in the woods. She was fat. The victim is a female, and she was shot. When they did a sketch of the crime scene, because sketches are still important, as I tell my students, when they're doing a sketch of the crime scene, they noticed that there was colonization of this body was very heavy in the facial area. And specifically, they found two species of blowflies that were colonizing the facial area. One is Sinomaya cadaverina, and when they did their analysis, they found that this species was 1 week old. And then they found another species, Lucilia sericata, the old name is Phoenicia sericata, which appeared to be 2 weeks old. So 2 weeks. However, this person had been seen alive last time prior to the discovery of the body 7 days before. So the question is, if this person was alive a week ago, why are these maggots 2 week old? Why are they so developed if this person was probably alive 2 weeks ago? Because again, like, these maggots were abnormally big. So maybe there was a problem with the alibi, or not with the alibi, with the last time that this person was seen. What is the reason that we see this discrepancy? Well, the reason that this discrepancy was seen is because the maggots were not overdeveloped. The maggots were just high. And if you remember, the colonization was in the facial area, meaning in the nose. And when they decided to analyze the gut content of the maggots, they found traces of cocaine. Cocaine is a stimulant. And if it's a stimulant in us as human, it's going to be a stimulant in maggots. So in maggots, it stimulated their development. So it made them look bigger than they were actually at the time that the body was found. So this is an application of what I told you before. You can use maggots as a substrate for toxicological analysis. Another case that I wanted to talk to you about is a case here in New Jersey, in Newark, where, tale as old as time. There's a bad odor. People are going to call the police. They open the garage. They found this body wrapped into blankets, into a sleeping bag. They brought it to the morgue. They unwrap it, and they found a decapitated body of a woman. So when they open it, they completely undressed it. You see that there's no colonization on the body. The major colonization seems to be on a pretty big open wound, I would say, which is, of course, the neck, where the head was removed. Now, this case is important to me because during this case, when we looked at the maggots that were collected, we found one maggot that is normally active in southern United States. Newark, New Jersey is on the east side coast, for those who are not maybe familiar with the area. So we are definitely not in southern United States. And the reason that this was important to me, at least, is because it shows that species are absolutely moving up because they're expanding their range, looking for the most suitable temperature. So in this case, we were able to help in the investigation, but we were also able to gain some other ecological information that is important for other reasons. And going towards our conclusions, let's talk about our training opportunity. So forensic entomology is relatively new in academic programs. You cannot really get a lot in some countries. I know that, like in Italy, for example, you cannot really get a degree in entomology, let alone in forensic entomology. But definitely in other parts of the world, they're still starting. What seems to be most popular is you get trained in entomology and you specialize in those groups. There are necrophagus, or there are very common colonizers of human remains, if that is what you wish to. But then there are other training opportunities that people, students, professionals, everyone can take to familiarize themselves with the subject and decide, assess whether or not they want to know more about it. Every year, I organize a forensic entomology workshop here in New Jersey, in Sussex County. Is about an hour and 40 minutes from New York City. The attendees, they get room and board for 2 weeks. We stay there, we stage carcasses in any possible way. We burn them, we bury them, we try to really recreate any type of possible scenarios so that the attendee can have, you know, the CSI component, the field component. Then we have a lab, so they bring the evidence back to the lab. They analyze it, they look at the evidence, they going to write a report, they're going to present their finding. So they have this multi and this interdisciplinary approach to all the disciplines that should be in harmony when analyzing a crime scene. And you know, the enrollment has been pretty high in the past years, and we even had a very diversified group. Also, the workshop is being offered through 3 different universities. That means that the students can have the opportunity of getting, yes, the certificate for attending the workshop, but also they can also register for university credits through either Montclair State, Rutgers, and now even Kean University. So it's just something that will allow them to, you know, and get even more out of this experience. And the reason that you see the 3 names of the course is because students can take credit for the workshop either as a forensic entomology class, as a decomposition ecology class, and now a course that I have developed and taught for the past 2 years. It's a course that is called How to Get Away with Murder. And I don't teach how to get away with murder, but it's just a course where we look at past cases, real cases, where the scientific evidence was handled so badly that whoever did it got away with it. And in some cases, that scientific evidence was actually forensic entomological evidence. So all of this is absolutely possible for our attendees. It is absolutely fun because, again, it's a 2-week full immersion workshop. So we definitely have to work, but also we're human, so we need entertainment and distraction. So within that facility itself, we have a lot of outdoor activities. We have a lot of things that we can do to help us get through the training that we're taking. And, you know, climbing, archery, boating is just some of the things that are possible given the location, given where we are. As we said, it is very interdisciplinary. When we do forensic entomology, we can do some molecular studies. We can do some forensic entomology and toxicology studies, ecology, and even just pure entomology for those of us who are interested in that. Molecular, you can do what is called DNA barcoding. So and this is just an example, and these are just examples of research that I am starting in my lab. In my forensic science lab at Kean, I have students involved in different areas. So I'm using forensic entomology as a bridge, as some sort of glue to keep together a lot of forensic science research projects together. For molecular, we're doing barcoding of some species that we cannot identify morphologically. And so that teaches the students the molecular techniques, but also as a very practical forensic applications. We are doing also the extractions of non-human DNA from entomological materials. So you have maggots, you're going to extract the DNA of whatever the maggots were feeding on. Toxicology. The projects that I am currently involved in, we are extracting volatiles. So those are like your volatile chemical substances that are somehow attracting insects after death comes, just to assess what are they, how their composition changes throughout the process of decomposition. And we're even doing something relative to the internal response of some blowflies when they are sensing these volatiles released from decomposing remains. In terms of ecology, we're doing just simple decomposition studies. We put things out there and we just look at what happens in all the insects that come in. Those are absolutely useful studies in general for forensic entomology for decomposition. And there's never going to be two projects that are going to be the same. We can be doing exactly the same thing and our results would always be different. So that's always great knowledge to have. And even just simple studies where you include or exclude insects, how does that affect decompositions? So there's really a lot that we can do in an ecological sense. And finally, in terms of entomology, we're doing development studies where we are looking at how long does it take to a certain species of blowflies to develop at a certain temperature. And in collaboration with other university like ASU, that's Arizona State, we are contributing to the building a pictorial larval key. That means a tool that we can use to identify larvae morphologically, which is absolutely very much needed right now. And with that, I am done, and I thank you very much for listening to me. I hope I didn't go too much over time. And if you have questions, feel free to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Denise, for taking such an elaborative lecture. So now I'll take a question from the participant. And before taking a question, we have some formality which we do in every participant for every speakers. So as already we are in a virtual space, but I'll request you to accept this certificate of appreciation from our side, from our organization, for taking an informative lecture and giving an information. And I also like to thank my team member, those who have supported me for sending emails, sending certificates, and sending other things, those who are helping me. And this is my dedicated team, Kritika, Vaishnavi, Lakshya, Pooja, Janita, and Tanya. They are doing wonderful work and they are reaching people of more than 50 countries so that they can participate in this workshop. And I give this certificate to my team member also, Kritika, Vaishnavi, Lakshya, Pooja, Janita, and Tanya. And I'll also thank to all those who donated in, for this cause. So Afreen, Advocate Anurag Agrawal, Sanya Sarma, Dr. Vinod Singh, Dr. Lekeshwar Yadav, and Vishwamitra Barua. They have helped us for continuing this lecture again. And all the registered participants, you all will get your certificate within 2 days maximum. We'll try to send within 2 or 3 days, but if it is any delay, maximum time we are taking 2 weeks. And this kind of certificate you all going to get. And one information also I like to say, this series, International Lecture Series, we have started for every Sunday. So the next session will be, you can check our page, YouTube, and you can follow our Facebook page, from where you can get the update. From 17, we had the lecture from the fingerprint comparison in a digital age by the John Patrick Molyneux, and he is a co-founder of the automatic fingerprint identification system. He developed a software, forensic comparison software for the fingerprinting. So now I'm going to take a question from all the participants. So those who have the question, they can raise your hand. I'm going to take a question one by one because, and I'll try to take a maximum question because the participant, those who are raising a hand are good in number. So just those who are raising in a sequence wide, I'm going to unmute. And thank you once again, Denise, for spending time with us. So question is from Nosa. Can you hear?
No.
Okay. Prince Kumar Sharma.
No, sir.
Your question. You please unmute.
I cannot hear anything.
Okay. Vishal Mishra.
No, sir.
So as I tell the name of the person, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Vichar Mishra.
Dr. Ranjit sir, yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Very good evening, ma'am, and good morning to you also. I have a simple question like how many cycles an arthropod can complete on a single adult dead body?
On a single dead body.
Yes.
So that will depend on how long does it take us to find the dead body. Because I mean, it really depends on how much time we give the fly and how much, it also depends on the temperature, on the humidity, on even how big the body is. Because if you have a very small body, it will take less time to consume it. And so that will mean that you cannot really have a lot of cycles. But if you have a big body and the temperature is suitable, then you can have 2-3 cycles.
Question.
There's really not a fixed number. It really depends on a lot of variables.
Okay, ma'am.
I hope I
Second,
replied
yes,
to that.
that's a very good answer. And I have a second question also. That was like the question was when you had told that semen was consumed and then the DNA can done. If the larva is converted into the adult fly, then it is possible or not?
So you're asking if non-insect DNA can be retrieved from an insect once it becomes adult?
Yes, sir.
It has been tried with pupae, and pupae it was possible. I don't think it's been possible with adult flies. I may be wrong, but I should check that. That's a great question. Absolutely.
And last question is there, ma'am. Very last question. There was a thing when you had told about when it was covered by the maggots, the entire dead body. So the inside temperature, the internal temperature of that body was not recorded actually. So a suggestion is there, we can put a sensor inside the dead body for the entire time. And in the real time, we can check what is the changes are taking place inside the dead body. Is possible?
Yes, it is absolutely possible. What we have, sometimes we use thermometers that have a very long metal probe. So you can put the probe inside the maggot mass. And so that probe will record the temperature of the maggots. And then you're going to have another thermometer that is going to record the temperature of the environment. And sometimes, like I have recorded temperatures that there was a difference in temperature of up to 30, 25 degrees Celsius. That is a big difference. That means that the body is significantly warmer than the environment.
Yeah. So there is another question from, sir, can you ask your question?
Hi, Denise. Thanks. Those are very good illustrations for us. Traditionally they teach us that maggots do not penetrate intact skin. But when you do autopsies, you see a lot of holes in the skin.
Mm-hmm.
So is that statement correct or not?
No, not at all. They can absolutely penetrate the skin. Absolutely. And you can absolutely see like all the tiny holes created by the maggots. Yes, yes.
And I've had this argument a couple of times. No. It cannot be. They must have entered through the orifices and all that. Whereas you're seeing the holes and you're seeing the maggots inside. Thank you.
No, even because they have like those two or one mouth hooks. And so like they can really dig in.
Yeah. So the next question is from Segun. Yeah, you all can type your question. I'll take a question from the chat because it's difficult to, if I'm taking someone question and I'm not able to check there. So I'll check through the chat and I'll introduce the question. So Denise, a few people asked from the YouTube, and those who have asked from the YouTube will record all your question and make a blog with all answer and send the link to you so that you all can read the answer, whatever you ask. Few people asked that, can you throw some light on forensic entomotoxicology?
Yes. So when we talk about toxicology and forensic entomology, we are talking about different things. We can talk about, you know, the detection of substances using maggots, or we can talk about how certain insects can detect volatile compounds to and actually find the body. We can even talk about, you know, how certain substances will affect the development of some species. For example, we just saw that cocaine will speed up their development. We know that ethanol actually will slow it down because, I mean, ethanol is a depressant. So when we talk about that field, we're really talking about different areas of research that can all be, they can all have its own applications in legal investigation. So it really depends on what the research question is. And then we can use different techniques that can be used to shed light on that. So it's really another very big areas, and we just have to zoom in whatever we are interested in, and also depending on, you know, the cases that we're working on.
Another question is asked by how can the maggot or eggs be preserved during autopsy for analysis in laboratory?
Okay, so if the maggots are alive, the best thing to do to preserve them is, and this is like, again, the optimal way, you want to throw them in very hot water for literally 5 seconds. You throw them in water in a beaker, you're gonna see that they're gonna come afloat very quickly. You're gonna fish them out of your beaker with forceps, put it in ethanol, between 75 and 80% ethanol solutions. You're gonna close it with a screw cap. They will be good to go. They will absolutely be good to go. Say that you don't have access to hot water, you can just put them in ethanol. That will also do it. It's a little bit more risky because, I mean, sometimes they can alter their morphology a little bit, but that's definitely better than nothing. So as long as you can somehow preserve their external morphology so that an entomologist can identify them, then you will be absolutely good to go. One thing that you should not do, and some people have done it, is they put it, you know, in rubbing alcohol, in isopropyl alcohol. That's not suitable. That is not going to preserve their morphology as you wanted it to be. And the goal is to preserve them so that you can identify them later, so that even you can share them between experts, you know, one expert for the prosecution, one expert for the defense. So those are the things that I will not suggest. If you really don't have anything where you can preserve it, get a very powerful vodka. And I'm not kidding, just because vodka has a very high content of alcohol, that will do it, that will preserve it. We have, like, I don't know if you guys know what Everclear is that solution to make liquors, to make drinkable alcohol. That's also another great way to preserve them. So these are like all, because I mean, you know, during the years I've had my lab where I have all the tools that I need. And then what if you're like in an emergency and you have to come up with something that works? So that's what I would suggest.
So there are many questions I have received from the participant, and it's very difficult to take all the question. So we will send a form we'll send a form for feedback and the question. So all can write a question directly over there. I'll send all question to the Denise. She'll make a reply of all the question, and we'll publish a blog. We'll send that booklet to everyone, or the blog link to all the participants. And just going to take few other questions. Can bird change the dynamic on entomology, especially insectivorous and the vultures?
I didn't hear that. Can you repeat it?
Can birds change the dynamic on entomology, especially insectivorous or vulture?
I'm not sure what this is referring to. You're talking about any predators that will feed on insects, right?
I think so.
So if you have something that is feeding on insects, which can be wasp, or it can be sometimes ants. Ants will remove the maggots from the dead body. What that can cause is you can slow down decomposition because you are removing things that are eating the body. And so if you are removing those things, the decomposition will slow down. So that is definitely something that will have an impact on the whole process of decomposition. This is why always, like, when I work in New Jersey, we have vultures. So what you do is you look for vultures' feathers all around the body, even just to assess if that has been happening all around the body. But definitely something that removes the maggots will also slow down decomposition.
Yeah, so I think I have received more than 200 questions. So I'll request everyone to send these questions through the form, which we'll share along with your certificate. So you will receive a question form within 2 weeks, and ask all your question. I'll forward all the question to Denise and she will reply, and then we can publish into the blog. It's very difficult to take a question. Like someone is asking how many times human DNA stay in a fly or other insect body.
How many times? What was the question?
How many times human DNA stay in fly or other insect body after eating human tissue?
That's difficult to estimate. It really depends on the case. It also really depends on the species. We really don't have a recipe that works for all. It's really, it depends on many, many variables.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I agree. So all those who are through the Facebook or the YouTube live, you also can ask a question, and we'll publish all these questions because we have already completed on time. So we have allotted 15 minutes for the question and 1 hour for the lecture. So we started on time and ending on time. So thank you, everyone. And I definitely answer all the questions from the, once I'll get the answer from the Dennis. So thank you, Dennis, for taking a wonderful session. And I just invite everyone for the 17th. Soon we will publish it on our website. Soon we will publish it on our Facebook page and the YouTube channel. So you all can fill the form and attend the next lecture. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.